Regions of the world extinct due to war. War is arguably the most horrific act humanity can inflict upon itself, leaving untold devastation in its wake. Sometimes, the destruction wrought by conflict is so great that even the passage of time cannot erase the scars left behind. From the sands of North Africa to the fields of France, these are some places that are uninhabitable, even years after the guns fell silent. Landmines of Egypt. Landmines are among the most destructive and dangerous reminders of a conflict. Buried deep in the ground, these, along with artillery shells, grenades, and other explosive devices, can linger for decades, if not longer, waiting for an unfortunate victim to stumble into their path. Many places in the world are inundated with forgotten, but still lethal pieces of ordnance, making life hazardous for those that live nearby.
Are you tired of your online activities being tracked or finding content blocked in your country? Are you tired of your Instagram feed getting reset when you connect from a new location? Meet Surfshark VPN, a tool that encrypts your data and keeps your online identity safe. Whether you're on public Wi-Fi or your home network, Surfshark ensures that your personal information stays out of the hands of cybercriminals. Not only that, but these too smart algorithms won't be able to mess up your doom scrolling with a feed from the wrong countries. When I'm traveling, I still love watching history content, but whatever I was watching at home isn't available in the country that I'm in. I make sure Surfshark sets my location back to where I was, so I can keep learning about history without having to wait till I get back home. Surfshark also offers Clean Web, which blocks annoying ads and potentially harmful malware. And don't worry about being tracked, Surfshark doesn't log your connection or activity. It's like ad blocker, but better. Here's a bonus. Surfshark even offers real-time antivirus protection and data monitoring. There aren't too many pop-ups on phones anymore, but sometimes you can accidentally download a file without even knowing you've clicked the link. You don't even have to think about that anymore. Ready to get surfing? Use the code SimpleHistoryLive to get an extra 3 months free. With Surfshark's 30-day money-back guarantee, there's no risk to try it out. Just click the link in the description below.
According to estimates, Iraq, Cambodia, China, Angola, Iran, and now Ukraine are among the most heavily mined nations on the planet, with large areas of the country uninhabitable due to their presence. Easily the most heavily landmined nation not actively at war, however, is Egypt. During the Second World War, Egypt, along with other portions of North Africa, was the site of intense fighting. And an unfortunate result of the protracted campaigning there was the laying of millions of landmines, particularly in the El Alamein area, the location of one of the war's most famous battles. Additional minefields were placed on the Sinai Peninsula and the area around the Suez Canal, the result of the numerous conflicts with Israel between 1956 and 1973. It is estimated that Egypt has over 20 million landmines, totaling around 20% of the world's share. These, along with unexploded artillery shells, bombs, and other ordnance, makes vast swaths of the country uninhabitable, or, at the least, exceptionally dangerous. It is estimated that over 8,000 people have been killed or injured by exploding landmines in the aftermath of the conflicts. To compound the problem, many of these areas are among the most potentially economically productive regions of Egypt, with the Egyptian government placing the amount of arable land unavailable for use at around 10% of the nation's area. This affects other sectors of the economy as well, including oil production, industrial development, and tourism. Over the decades, the Egyptian military has spent a considerable amount of resources in clearing these mines, removing millions of explosive devices. Several areas have been made safe thanks to these efforts, though it will be many more years until the scourge of buried explosives is completely eradicated. The Cajo Olave testing site. Sometimes the scars left from war do not come from the fighting itself, but rather the preparation for it. Just off the southern coast of the Hawaiian island of Maui is the uninhabited island of Cajo Olave, which has earned the unfortunate title of the most shot island in the world. Originally used by the native Hawaiians for religious practices, the island was later used by ranchers as grazing space. After the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, the island was placed under martial law and the island taken for use by the Navy. Throughout the remainder of the Second World War, Kaho'olawe was used for target practice, with the primary purpose centered on training Navy personnel to bombard shore-based targets in order to support amphibious operations. After the war ended in 1945, the U.S. military continued to use the island as a live-fire training ground. During the Korean War, mock airfields and supply convoys were set up to train pilots. And during the Vietnam War, fake North Vietnamese anti-aircraft batteries were erected to give pilots experience engaging these threats. By far, the most damaging event on the island was dubbed Operation Sailor Hat. In order to simulate the effect of a nuclear blast, 500 tons of TNT were placed on the shoreline, with target ships placed close by. The resulting blast left a massive crater that still exists today. Perhaps even worse, the force of the explosion cracked into one of the underground aquifers, part of the limited freshwater sources on the island, flooding it with seawater and rendering it useless, and permanently damaging the island's fragile ecology. Over the decades, countless tons of ordnance was dropped on Kaho'olawe, ranging from small 20mm cannon rounds to giant battleship shells, as well as aerial bombs, napalm, and virtually every other type of munition used by the U.S. military. After protests by local Hawaiians started in 1976, the testing of weapons was halted in 1990 by order of President George Bush. In 1998, a concerted effort to clean up the island began, and by 2004, an estimated 75% of the island's surface, up to 4 feet deep, was deemed to have been cleared of explosives and shrapnel. In spite of these efforts, around 25% of the island remains uninhabitable, as these areas have not been cleared adequately for safe usage. In 2020, efforts to control a large fire on Kaho'olawe were called off out of fear that the heat of the fire may detonate hidden explosives, posing a risk for firefighters. Today, there are no permanent residents on the island. Many believe that it will take generations for the island to be declared safe, though the scars left behind will never be fully restored. France's Zone Rouge. Arguably the most devastating clash between nations occurred between the Allies and Central Powers on the Western Front during the First World War. After years of killing on an industrial scale, large portions of the battle zone were forever altered. As the bulk of the fighting on the Western Front took place in France, it was that nation that still has the deepest scars from the conflict. Once verdant farmland, the environment was transformed into a shell-cratered hellscape. After the war ended, the French government classified the battle zones into 3 colored sectors, based on how much damage they had sustained. Green zones endured minimal damage and could recover quickly. Yellow zones suffered higher levels of damage but were still recoverable in time. Both of these zones are deemed safe for human habitation, though a reminder of the conflict in the form of a buried artillery shell or other munition will appear occasionally. Even today, this area produces a so-called iron harvest, where French and Belgian farmers will plow up unexploded ordnance, killing or injuring the unsuspecting victim. Each year, hundreds of tons of unexploded rounds are found this way. The third classification, however, called Zone Rouge or Red Zone, remains unsafe to this day. After over a century of cleanup efforts, the Red Zone has shrunk in size to about 40 square miles of area, spread throughout the northeastern portion of the country along the Belgian border. It was here that some of the fiercest fighting of the war took place, on infamous battlefields such as Verdun and the Somme. During the Battle of Verdun alone, over 40 million artillery shells were fired during the 300-day-long battle. This, in addition to the other battles during the 4 years of fighting, has left millions of artillery rounds still buried, with the static nature of the Western Front compounding the effect in a relatively concentrated area. Explosives are not the only danger. World War I was known for the extensive use of poison gas, and the Zone Rouge contains copious amounts of poison gas shells that can be triggered by an unwary victim. In addition, large amounts of other chemicals, such as lead, zinc, mercury, and arsenic, have leached into the soil, permanently contaminating it. In some areas, arsenic concentrations are so high, vegetation can no longer grow. Due to the lack of human interaction, the Zone Rouge has seen an abundance of wildlife, which attracts hunters and foragers. Though the French government has issued repeated warnings, as the flesh of game, such as wild boar, mushrooms, and other foods gathered there contain dangerous levels of lead and other toxins. Even fires from wood collected in the red zone can release these deadly poisons. The area in the Zone Rouge is so dangerous that the French government has forbidden habitation, going as far as removing the inhabitants of 9 villages, which are described as villages that died for France. Since the end of hostilities, the French government has made a concerted effort to clear the affected area and have made significant progress, but not without a cost. Over 600 deminers have lost their lives attempting to restore their country from a devastated wasteland to the verdant fields they once were. In spite of their efforts, there is a long way to go, with estimates ranging from 300 to 900 years before the Zone Rouge is completely safe. These and many other places around the world are a testament to the destruction that war leaves behind. For long after the guns fall silent, the effects of combat can last far longer, a stark reminder of the consequences of battle.